Guys, welcome back to the Jenks Island podcast, the only NFL podcast where you get your takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback. As you can see on the screen here, we got three different guests here. We got Ty McGee, as usual, Hammer's back, and we got a long return of Ned coming back in and breaking down the receiver class. This is a really fun class. There's like 20 guys in the rankings here that are going to be probably drafted within the first 4-5 rounds, and a lot more after that. I think the usual, I checked the averages over the last 10 drafts. It's like 30 guys usually get taken in the draft. So we're going to break down the top 5 for you guys in this video, since there's 4 of us. And then we're all going to give a sleeper at the end of the video as well. So first off, we're going to start with our lists, and then we'll break them all down, and then we'll do the sleepers after that. So starting off, Ned, you're the longest return of a guest here. So we're going to let you go first here. What's your top 5 in this receiver class?
Yeah, absolutely. Are we supposed to talk through them, or are we just listing the guys?
Nah, just list the names, and then we'll break them down after.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. So at number 5, I have Jack Bech. At number 4, I have Jayden Higgins. At number 3, I have Luther Burden. At number 2, I have Emeka Egbuka. And then at number 1, I have Matthew Golden.
Okay, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. I think it's a solid list. I think Ty has a little bit of a similar list, and then Hammer is a little bit closer, but he's a little bit different. But Ty, I'll let you go next. What's your list?
Yeah, I have a bit of a different list, though. A big name left off of Ned's list, but I'll start at number 5. I have Jayden Higgins. At 4, I have Tetairoa McMillan, a big name left off of Ned's list. Yeah. 3, I have Emeka Egbuka. At 2, I have Luther Burden, and then at 1, Matthew Golden.
All right, Hammer, what's your list?
All right, number 5, we got Emeka. At number 4, we got Tet. At 3, we got Jayden Higgins. At 2, we got Matthew Golden. And at number 1, we got Luther Burton.
So T-Mac off the list, Ned, is a little wild, but I mean, there's some talk going around. We'll get into him in a little bit, breaking down why he kind of just fallen off of some people's boards. But my 5 are going to be Matthew Golden at number 5. Well, lower on him than a lot of you guys. At number 4, I got Elic Ayomanor. I like, we even looked up the pronunciations before this, and I'm still probably butchering that. But Luther Burden at number 3, Emeka at number 2, and then number 1, I got T-Mac still up there on my board. And I'll break down why later on. But the only guy that's not on everyone else's lists from me and then Hammer, we got Zach Bech. Zach Bech, I'll let you go first, Hammer, kind of breaking down, or Jack Bech. I don't know why I confuse his names. There's Ned. Ned has him on the list, so I'm confusing the list.
Yeah, I have on the
Ned
list.
has him on the list. Number 5. And we were breaking down all the text. I know Hammer's really high on him. He wants to be a Packer. So that's why I got that a little bit mixed up. But Ned, break him down. Why do you have him on your list at number 5?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jack Bech is like really easy to sort of like put under the radar. You know, you don't really look at him. I think a lot of people write him off, but like once you turn on the tape, I think what you see are a lot of traits that are like really translatable to the NFL. And when I rank these guys, what I try to do is I try to find the guys who I think are the most surefire to be like good NFL players. And I think Jack Bech's traits, like his physicality, the strength of his hands, you know, the stuff he does at the top of the route, I think are things that are going to make him a 10-year player in the NFL at least. Like I don't see Jack Bech, you know, being a guy who signs a rookie deal and flares out after that. And I think, you know, his size also is a big contributor there. He's 6'1", he's about 215. He's kind of a bigger guy. And I think that he's going to find a very solid role with some team. And so he's just very surefire at the number 5 spot.
All right, Hammer, another guy that really is high on him. I know you want him to be a Packer. What are some of the traits that you like that would make him a good player for the Packers?
Yeah, you know, like Ned said, you know, I like his physicality, his toughness. I don't think he ran a 40 time. I wonder what that would be, because he definitely plays pretty fast. So I'm guessing it would be in the 4.4s, maybe high 4.4s.
He ran Hammer he ran a 4.55. 4.55, yeah.
At his pro day, not at the combine though. But 4.55. That's a little slower than I thought. That's surprising.
It's not too
Take
bad.
him off the board, Goody. Take him off the board. Nah, wait. Nah, but you know what? I like him. He's fun. He spent 2 years at LSU, didn't really get on the field. Went to TCU, and he really came onto the scene this past season, put up some good numbers. So, only 1 year, like big production. So I think this is a guy that's going to maybe take 2 or 3 years to really kind of translate into the NFL, transition into the NFL. And he won the Senior Bowl MVP. And I was listening to a podcast, and Steve Smith said that whatever NFL team drafts him should flip him over to tight end.
I could see that if he puts on a little bit of weight. And I know LSU his first year he led the team in receptions. I'm like but it was
And
like
yards.
it wasn't a really high number. It was like
No, it
like
wasn't.
receptions.
It was like
like
400 yards, but that was also a roster that had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas on it.
It was a very stacked room.
Guys
But Hammer, I bring it up because he was kind of like that, like Evan Ingram from almost like he was kind of like a bigger body guy that he was kind of across the field, things like that. So they could see it like I could see him being a tight end in the NFL. And a quick note as well for him, his story, obviously his brother passed away in like the New Orleans terrorist attack, which is like it's a really significant event. And then obviously with the Senior Bowl, things like that, this guy's playing for something else. So that's going to be a story coming into the NFL. And I have him at number 6 on my list, just missing the top 5, but I think he's going to be a really solid player in the NFL. Next on the list, we can go. There's a couple guys here. I guess we'll go with Jayden Higgins. Ty, you have him at number 5 on your list. Hammer is at number 3. Ned at number 4, and he's off my list completely. But Ty, what do you got for Jayden Higgins?
Yeah, it was tough for me between him and Tet. I think kind of what sets him and Tet apart for me, because I think they're very similar receivers, right? Similar size. Jayden Higgins ran a little bit faster 40 time, but I think Tet plays a little bit faster than his 40 did too. I see both of them really succeeding as like bigger slot guys. For me, Jayden Higgins is like tighter hips and long strides, so he doesn't get out of his breaks really well, right? And that was something that, when we get into Ted, I'll talk about. I think he does a little bit better of a job. And for as big as he is too, he's not, the most effective run blocker. So big body guy, right? He doesn't get out of his breaks well. It doesn't, block well, but he does run his routes really smoothly, right? I think he has excellent like contact balance. He's, even though he's not getting physical in the run game, he can get physical in the pass game. I think a lot of times too, another difference that we'll get into with Tet, but I think he uses his large frame to create separation at the catch point. I don't think he does a great job of creating separation off his route running and off the line, but I think, he just utilizes his size and, he's not a body catcher. He's a hand catcher, right? He gets out there, he extends his hand. So, I think for me, he's kind of like a Michael Pittman type of guy, right? Like not a burner, just, kind of guy that does his job, bigger body, and can catch some contested balls. And yeah, like I said, big slot. He played a lot of slot in college too, 87 catches, 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. So he had a lot of success there with another, big name receiver in Jalen Noel on the outside. So, he could step in at day one and be a guy, that plays in the slot for and maybe your 4th receiver.
Yeah, I gotta agree here. I'm gonna give my cons really quick, just so that Ned and Hammer can give some of their bigger pros because they have them a little bit higher. So I'm gonna go my the cons for him, similar to what you said, Ty. I think he's gonna be limited to more of a slot kind of guy in the NFL, or a big slot in the NFL. And he lacks some run after the catch ability. I don't think he's not a really hard tackle. I think he was going down a little bit easier when I'm watching some of his tape. And I think he's also he lacks some of that breakaway speed. He had a good 440 time at 4.47, but in game after he catches the ball, his speed and acceleration kind of wasn't there for him to be a little bit higher on my list. I have him at number 7 on my list. But Ned, I know you have him a little bit higher, and then Hammer, you have a little bit higher. So Ned, what are your pros for him, bumping him up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I really like about Jayden Higgins is his suddenness and his ability to like tempo routes. I think oftentimes, like when you talk about some of the nuances of route running, something a lot of people, will bring up is like the concept of slow, then fast, then slow. And Jayden Higgins does a really good job of doing that. And Ty, I know you said he has some tighter hips. Definitely agree with that. Simultaneously, I watched him run routes at the combine. And I thought he was really, really smooth and really, really fluid. When you pair, that sort of smoothness with his, kind of rare blend of size at 6'4" and about 215. I think that, he could be a pretty solid receiver in the NFL. I think, the things you like about like a Nico Collins, I think you could like about like a Jayden Higgins in the NFL. And I don't think he's a day one pick necessarily, but simultaneously, I think what we end up doing is like we look at a lot of these guys who are day two, sort of early on or mid day two picks, sort of look at their careers and we're like, maybe they should have just been day one picks. I think Jayden Higgins is like a really strong candidate to be one of those guys. Like you look at someone like Ladd McConkey last year, who I think was picked 36th overall, but then in a redraft, he is obviously a top 20 pick. And I think we could in a year from now be saying something similar about Jayden Higgins.
Okay, Hammer, what are your pros for him? Bumped up your board.
Yeah, I like Jayden Higgins a lot. These guys said a lot about them. I like what Ned said about the suddenness in his route running. It's kind of smoother than you expect. When you're about to turn on the tape, you're like, all right, he's a big guy that just, probably not the best route runner and just wins a bunch of jump balls. But no, his route running is pretty good for his size. I kind of took a note and I was like, it kind of reminds me a little bit to Mike Evans. And I said it because Mike Evans, bigger guy, not a speed guy, but, he just has a good, like suddenness and feel in his routes and, can create that separation with his size and strength. And I don't know, kind of just remind me a little bit of Jayden Higgins. And I think Jayden Higgins is a deep threat, like a big time deep threat. I think he can play on the outside. There's one guy on Twitter that made a bunch of cut ups. It was like all Jayden Higgins, vertical, targets or whatever. And, every time that ball was thrown, it was either a catch or it was a penalty because DBs, when that ball goes up and they're running this big guy who's 6'4", they get nervous and they get grabby because they're going to get mossed. So, I think, he's going to, I think he's going to be a big time deep threat in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I don't mind the take at all. I think he'll probably be, like Ned said, probably early round 2. I think that's really from like the 32 to 40 is kind of like the range I'm looking for him to go. Because if he's at 40 and the Saints didn't take a receiver at 9, I could really see the Saints going him because they're looking for that bigger body kind of receiver right now on the team.
To Hammer's point too, right? I mean, he had a 93.1% hands grade and only a 3% career drop rate on 350 targets. So he does catch a lot of balls, right? He does have the ability to play on the outside, but just from the tape, I think immediate success would be big slot. But yeah, he definitely could play on the outside.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Ty. Hammer, you're someone that you're a little bit lower on than everyone else is going to be Emeka Egbuka here out of Ohio State. Why are you so low on him? Not low on him, but like he's top 5, but a little bit lower on him than some of these other guys here. So what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think I'm only just a little bit lower on him just because he is a slot, right? I think all these other guys can play outside and play in the slot, but I think Emeka is just a slot. But I mean, he's still a stud. He's gonna be a first round guy. He's from Ohio State, so he's gonna be a stud receiver in the league. That's what they do. That's the type of guys they produce. Only ran a 4.4940. I thought it was a little slow. I thought he played a lot faster on tape. Good route running, good ball tracking and catch radius. He was a former baseball player, and then like I said, he's a slot guy. He's not going to play on the outside. I mean, yeah, that's really. I don't want to say too much. Everyone else can chip in, but yeah, I got him number 5 just because he's a little bit slot. And, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, my immediate reaction is I think some of these other guys. So in my opinion, like I got a couple of other guys that are higher on your list, a little bit lower, because they're also it's just going to probably be slots in my opinion. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I think I mean, personally, I got him at number 2, right? Because I think he is a great slot. And Hammer, like you said, I want to drill that point down that this guy's an OSU player, and he's a leader for the team. And when we see these guys from Ohio State come into the NFL, they're all really, really successful. Obviously, JSN, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, they're all doing very, very well in their roles. Chris Olave is being limited, obviously, by Derek Carr and the Saints quarterback situation. So I don't want to get too much in that and his concussions, things like that. Stinks for him. But all these Ohio State guys really balling out, and they were also guys that could be more of a slot coming out of college. And so I like his role a lot, and I think he could be a really good player in the NFL. So I have him at number 2, bumped up. Ty, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's higher for me on my board because he is such an elite slot, right? Like when you look at his route tree, it's super duper refined and diverse. Like he can kind of run anything. He really excels in the screen game and the yards after catch, right? He's super duper slippery. He's got, The 40 time might not have been there, but he's super explosive when he has the ball in his hands. My only like real concern with him is a little bit of the durability, right? He underwent a tightrope left ankle procedure in December, and you could see like there was one of the doctors on Twitter that every time it was a cut off the left foot, he was just a little bit slower, and I kind of wondered too if that was affecting the 40 time. But you expect him to get back, be healthy. He's going to be a slot guy. You know what you're getting from him. He's a sound blocker, right? Like he does all the things that you want. Plus, he brings a different aspect that some of these other guys don't. He can be a returner, right? He has some returning experience. He's played a lot of football. For me, he's very, very similar to JSN, one of his former teammates, right? Like similar frame, similar type of receiver, similar slot guy. I think he comes in day one, and he's a guy kind of makes an impact like Lad McConkey did.
Yeah, I got to agree. Ned, you have him number 2 as well. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where he's just such a safe pick. And I think like maybe that ceiling isn't like exactly what you'd want it to be in a first round pick. But at the end of the day, like I think you want to invest in somebody who you have a lot of confidence in. And I think you have a lot of confidence. I think his floor to ceiling difference is probably the smallest in any of the guys we're going to talk about. And that makes him worthy of that first round investment. Ty, you already you mentioned the thing about JSN, and I couldn't agree more. I think, some might call it a lazy comparison because, right, they're coming out of Ohio State, but they have like really similar skill sets. I mean, I think they're both sure-handed. And I think, when you reflect on the JSN pick by the Seahawks a couple years ago, you're like, that wasn't necessarily like a sexy pick. That wasn't like the most intriguing prospect, so to speak. But look how reliable JSN has been. I actually think like the same thing is going to happen with Egbuka. So I think when you have a guy who's just, you can be that confident that he's going to be solid, you got to rank him highly.
Yeah. I think he kind of is like you said, Ned. He might not have like the highest ceiling, but his floor is pretty high too. I think he could be really an instant impact player. And then I will say he had a 9.72 RAS. I haven't really been giving those out for a lot of these guys, but I think that's something that some NFL teams are going to have that bump them up their boards as well. My number 4, Elic Ayomanor, the guy that I know Hammer's very, very high on for the Packers. I'm high on him for the Saints at 40. If he falls to us there, I think this guy, for a lot of reasons, I have him a little bit higher on my list. He's 6'2", 206, and has an absurd ability to make contested catches and acrobatic catches as well. He's able to adjust his body to the ball in a lot of different positions. He's a solid route runner across the tree. Could be a little bit more polished, but I think he's solid at it. I think he has absolutely incredible effort in the run blocking. I think there's like a 2-minute tape of him just going all out, balls to the wall, blocking guys on Twitter. I think he has great speed and athleticism for his size. 9.71 RAS, 4.44 40. For cons for him, I think he's not the best separator in man coverage. I think obviously a little bit lankier, but I think just separating in man could be a little bit of a thing that bounces him down some draft boards. He has inconsistent hands at times. I think that comes with a little bit less separation. And then I want to say the biggest thing for him is injury history. He has PCL, ACL, MCL, and meniscus issues in his past. So that is pretty much everything in your knee that could go wrong went wrong for him. So I want to see him be able to stay healthy, but I think the potential for him is really, really high. I think he's the most underrated receiver in this class out of these top guys. So I'm really excited to see what he does in the NFL. I think he's going to be probably like Jayden Higgins kind of range, 32, maybe to like 45, somewhere there. I think a team could really pick him in that range, but a lot of people have him falling a lot further than that. So I'm interested to see where he goes. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Ned, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I really like his, ball skills. I think that's like probably the most attractive thing about him. Like he really is a great go and get it receiver. I think I struggle a tiny bit with just how he's kind of an awkward mover a little bit. Like I think he's a little bit stiffer. But at the end of the day, and this is something that I need to let go of, if a guy can play, like they can play. Like it doesn't really matter, how like their releases are looking or like how smooth they look per se if they're like getting it done. And he seems like a guy who could just be one of those guys in the NFL who just like gets it done on a routine basis. I truthfully can't say that I've watched too much of him to like make some sort of assessment where I think he's going to be great in the NFL or I think he's going to be like not so good. But I think that sort of contested catch ability is one of those things that is one, translatable, and two, you can't really teach to people. Like you can't really make someone to go and get a receiver. And so I think if you like start out with that, you can build on a lot of other traits. And the injury history, like you mentioned, is a little bit concerning. That's kind of a giant injury to have on your knee. But it was good to see him recover from it and have like a really productive season.
Yeah, and Hammer, another person that I know is very high on him. Hammer and I were texting about him, and Hammer put me on to the Colorado tape. I went and watched that. His team against Colorado was absolutely absurd. So, Hammer, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, that tape alone is just it's awesome. It makes you kind of fall in love with the dude. You know what? He's just a football player. He doesn't do anything special. Nothing about his game is like wows you. He doesn't have this one kind of trait that like knocks you back in your seat. He's just a football player. He's good at everything. I think, the production in college wasn't the best, so that hurts his draft stock. The injury history doesn't help. That's going to hurt your draft stock. Um, I think at best he's a receiver too. I see him going in the second round. I have this weird feeling too that he's going to end up with the New England Patriots. Don't know why, but I think Vrabel's going to, I think this is a guy, the character that I think Vrabel's going to like. They need some weapons. I know they got Stephon Diggs, but he's not what he used to be. So that's my prediction. I like him a lot. I think he's a stud. I'm rooting for him. I don't think he has potential like some of these other guys. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the height. He's just an all-around solid football player.
All right, Ty, what are your thoughts? You got any disagreements?
Yeah, he does kind of have a decent frame, right? 6'2", like he's not the biggest dude, but he's got a decent frame, and 4'4", right? Like he's, I think he's a really, really good route runner, but the big thing for me outside of the injury stuff is the drops, right? 12 drops since 2023. So you don't, I know bad quarterback play, right, can sometimes play into that, but you don't want to see, that's a lot of drops to have.
Yeah.
So, I just want to see that cleaned up. But he's a really, really good route runner at all three levels, right? Vertically, he can beat guys because he has the speed and he's long enough. And I think in the intermediate range, he really, really will have a lot of success there. But it's just cleaning up the drops.
Yeah, no, and so going from him to another guy that's a little bit taller. Some of the other guys that we're going to talk about the rest of the video are more slot type of guys. So this last really, really tall, lanky, can do it all kind of guy is going to be Tetairoa McMillan. A lot of you guys have met Ty and John have him at Hammer, have him at 4. Ned has him off the list completely. I have him at number 1. Huge range here on the Jenks Island podcast for these lists. But Hammer, I want to hear your thoughts first.
Oh, come on, you guys know it, Ned. This guy's got a top 10 pick off his top 5 list.
All right, Ned. We'll let you go first. What are your thoughts? Why you got him so low? Where is he at on your list too? I'll ask. Like, where do you kind of have him?
8. I'm just predicting.
I think he's probably just outside the top 5. If he's not 5, he's like 6 or 7. Okay. I think he makes some really great plays on film. I think he makes a lot of plays that are extremely explosive. Like people fall in love with that. You see some of these one-handed catch highlights. You look at like the videos of him running around the practice field, doing like the catches between the legs and stuff like that. And this guy's a surefire top 10 draft pick, right? And I think that sort of flashiness is what people are basing most of their like analysis on. And I just think that there's a lot of like inconsistencies to him. I don't think he plays super strong. He's a kind of wiry guy. He's not overly fast. We're at a 4.55 at the pro day. That probably translates to the combine at what, like a 4, probably closer to 4.6, right? I mean, we run a little bit faster at the pro day. And I'm just not in love with his game, and I watched Steve Smith's analysis of him, and he said that another concerning thing was, when the offense wasn't like centered around him, he was frustrated. And that's what he learned when he was watching, Jacob Counting the year before. And I think that blend of traits, like sort of from a character standpoint, and then blended with like the inconsistency in the actual game could lead to some like real trouble in the NFL. So, you have him ranked number 1, Grayson, because you think he has, the most talent. He has the most ability to be a number 1 receiver. And that's a fair way to rank him. Like, I totally get that. But for me, I want a surefire guy if I'm going to pick him in the first round. And so, and if he fell to the Commanders at 29, I'd run in the card in about 4 seconds because I think he's going to be gone long before then. And I think he has a ton of potential. Simultaneously, though, if you're going to have a guy who, got on a stream the other day and said he doesn't watch football. Like, I don't know if you guys knew that, but he got on a stream the other day and like legitimately said, like, I don't watch football. We watch tape in the wide receiver room. And it's like, you want to blend, you want to put all this stuff together. And it's like, I will not pick you in the top 10. I don't care how many videos you showed me of one-handed catches or, crazy clips on the practice field. Like, you do that, and I think you're, like, headed to, like, a very concerning place in your NFL career. I think it's one of those things we feel like we've seen this story before. I don't have a pro comp for him. I think maybe you could have him as like a watered down Mike Evans. Fair enough. Mike Evans is one of the best receivers to play in the NFL. I think if he hits a watered down Mike Evans, probably a very successful NFL career. Simultaneously, I think his floor is a guy like Josh Doctson, who I watched, get picked by the Commanders in the first round, who made a bunch of crazy catches at TCU. He's jumping over guys like Moss and them. And I think people fall in love with those highlights that you miss when a guy is doing the small things very inconsistently. And it can lead to a really problematic NFL career.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mind at all. I'll address all of the. I'll talk about all of that. I'll go last because I had him highest on the list. But I'll let Hammer, you or Ty go first or go next. What are your thoughts on him? Why you guys got him at number 4?
I mean, look, like Ned was saying, Ted's the guy that everyone wants to hate on and be like, this guy can't do route running and this and that and the character. But if he's on the board and your team selects him, you're like, let's go. We got Ted. I'm doing this crazy. Like, he's that guy for probably a lot of people. Nah, I mean, you know what? Ted's this. You know what this is, Jenks? It's a freaking unicorn. All right. I mean, guys, what? That was bad.
I don't know. I don't know what it is, Ham, but
listen, Ted is a unicorn, right? There's guys, guys like him are not built in labs. I mean, they're only built in labs, but like rarely, right? But this guy's a freak. I mean, the character concerns is why he's kind of number 4 on my list. And right, the route running, the separation, the release, even the 50-50 balls, like you like to see him win even more. You like to see him be more physical. But he's got the most potential in this receiver class. That's why he's number 4 on my list. And if it wasn't that way, right? If he was a couple inches shorter and this and that, then yeah, he might be 6-7 on my list. But I mean, that potential it's up there. And I think the comp that I've heard the most is like Drake London. I've heard a lot of Drake London with Ted.
Yeah, that's the common comp for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad comp. Like, it's not.
No.
Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he kind of fell for me too because of the film stuff, right? And the separation. Like, the separation was definitely a problem. But, like, despite the separation just like Higgins, right, he can still make the contested catches. Yeah. I think he's an even more elite possession receiver because the potential if the dude just, like, caught some balls away from his body. Like, he catches all these balls, like, kind of in his chest. And I'm like, dude, you're 6'5". Like, if you extend your arms, you're going to catch about, like, 10 more of those contested balls that smaller corners get in there and knock out. So that's the one big thing I want to see from him at the next level is just use your hands, extend your arms, like, stop catching the ball with your body. But I think despite the no film stuff, he's a really smart player. I think in zone, he really, really understands, like, spacing and the scramble drills where Fafita was running all the time. Like, he moves really well in space. For me, it was like Cortland Sutton, right? He reminds me so much of Court. I hated that he reminded me of Court too, because all the things that I get pissed off about Cortland Sutton about with the chicken arm or the dinosaur arms and, the being scared, like to catch a ball, like, and use your arms. Like, that's the stuff that gets me with Ted. If you put him in the slot though, and this is not a direct comparison, but I was watching the Larry Fitzgerald of Football Life. The guy could have that type of an impact on the game because he's so big. He has so much potential. I know he is. Not a comparison, but in the slot, if you watch Ted in the slot, I'm telling you, he was a problem consistently because he does have breakaway speed that doesn't show up in the 40 time. I'm telling you, Ned, put him in the slot. He's a real problem. Do not put him on the outside.
Have you ever seen that clip where the guy goes, "You have no idea how good Tim Duncan is"?
No, I think you're on.
You guys ever seen that clip? You ever seen that clip? The guy goes, "You have no idea how good Tim Duncan was." Oh my god! That's how I feel about Larry Fitzgerald. I mean,
he's not Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald's a top 3 receiver.
Larry Fitzgerald, obviously.
That's why I did that.
Impact. When Bruce Arians put Larry Fitz in the slot, it was a crazy, crazy impact at that point in his career. Put Ted in the slot from day one. Because you do not want this guy on the outside. He's fluid. He's got fluid hips. Fine. But he's a problem in the slot because he's so big, because his speed is kind of sneaky. Like, I think he'd be a really, really good slot.
But at the end of the day, you can't justify, we can't have him be a unicorn and also just be a slot receiver. And I think, like, his play strength on the outside genuinely concerns me. Like you watch
gotta let
guys
the
come down and
unicorn
like
free,
make
man.
contact with him, and he just like drifts into him. I
Yeah.
don't know.
All right.
Yeah,
It's
and
tough.
that's why he's at 4.
It's
That's why
tough.
he's at 4. Because he can't
Yeah, I
play
think it's
big on the
worse.
outside.
Which
All right.
doesn't make any sense. He's huge.
I know.
He is
Like,
huge.
that
He's
worries
lanky.
me.
But the production is there, right? The last 2 years,
Yeah,
I mean,
for
this
sure.
past year,
But I mean,
84 catches, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. The year before that, he had 90 catches, 1,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Like,
The
Yeah,
you watch
production
the
is
teams he's playing though.
The
That,
teams,
I feel
okay.
like
All right. But we could say this. I mean,
Travis Hunter's playing the same teams.
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
We
you're
didn't
right.
talk about Travis Hunter for this video. Like Travis Hunter's league of his own. Like he would be receiver 1 if we knew he was gonna be receiver 1. But the reason I have T-Mac so high, and I'll address the cons first, Ned. Obviously, the film thing came out. I feel like it was like a anti T-Mac propaganda release just to kind of like bump him down. Because so apparently that film is from his freshman year.
It's like freshman year. That's what I was gonna say too.
Whoa, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
They got
I
my
didn't know
face
it
wrong.
either
Didn't
until
know
I
that.
saw it, Ned. So like I'm like, I had no clue. And then I saw someone, yeah, this was from freshman year. I was like, oh, because no one was putting that in the links.
Wow.
They're all like, T-Mac says he doesn't watch film, leaving out like
I
the
thought
full
that was a
context.
live interview.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like it from the like it seemed like it was like a more recent interview. But anyways, like freshman year, like people could change. He could have adapted and learned to watch
Yeah.
film and enjoy it, or he could not. Like he could not. And some of these NFL teams might know that from interviewing him, things like that. Like we don't know as these general fans kind of tuning in, but the insiders probably do. And I will say, one of the Saints' really good beat writers, Nick Underhill, shout out to him. He went out and said that he's heard that he was coddled at Arizona. Some of the coaches, like, they worry about this guy transferring to a bigger school, and they don't coach him up as hard. They kind of say, "Hey, you do you. You're a unicorn. You're gonna be a dog. Like if we coach him up too hard, he'll leave, right?" And so you're a little bit worried about that. That could be something that going into NFL, a coach gets up, like goes hard on him, and he gets upset and throws a fit. That could happen. You don't know. But I mean, those are the big cons that are like need to be addressed. But I think his pros and his potential kind of outweigh that. That's why I have him a little bit higher on my list. And another reason is I think a lot of these other guys that you guys are going to talk about in a second are more of slots. And I think this guy, he could be a little bit of everything. And like you said, Ty, he might be an absolute dog in the slot. But I think he has potential to do kind of a little bit of everything.
I'll just add one more thing to your point though,
yeah,
Jenks.
go ahead, Hammer.
He was a 5-star recruit, right? So I mean, this guy was probably given a lot. And he's got that big ego. And since high school and college, he's just been able to dominate because of his size and everything. So, now you go into the NFL. There's a lot of big dudes and strong dudes. So we're going to see how he matches up, and if he's really built for the big time.
He also dominated with Noah Fafita at quarterback too. So, if you watch the film, that guy was terrible. It was a hard watch.
Ty, you hate these college quarterbacks, dude.
Dude, I'm pretty sure some of these dudes are bad.
Some people are like high on him.
Yeah,
some
that's
people are
crazy.
like high on him, which is
not Noah Fafita. Not
really.
anymore.
I remember like seeing a couple
Maybe
coming into this year. They thought Arizona was going to be sick.
Yeah,
and then they were at the bottom of the Big 12 because he's god awful.
Yeah.
Anyways, like some of the other pros that obviously we've all talked about, and being lankier, being able to make contested catches, things like that. I think one of the big things for him that I like when I'm watching his tape is he does do a good job of coming back to the ball and the quarterback on comeback routes, curls, things like that. He does a pretty good job of working back to it and then turning after the catch and getting a few extra yards. And he does a great job after the catch. It's one of his big pros for me. He is a bigger guy that can make moves and make people miss after the catch. And I think that's kind of like Jayden Higgins, Elic Ayomanor, like they're not doing that as well. So I think that's a little bit one of the more of the reasons that I have him a little bit up higher on my list too. But yeah, I think obviously I think he has the highest floor out of all of these guys. And
ceiling.
High ceiling. Sorry, I flip it. Whatever, Hammer. Calm down. Calm down.
I just caught it. I just shouted out.
No, thank you. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what he does. And if he goes to the Saints, I'd be pretty hyped. Like I think he's a guy that in Kellen Moore's system, like you could have him as a slot and have Olave outside, Rashid Shaheed outside, and Juwan Johnson at tight end. Like you could do a bunch of different things if that's your receiver core. So I would be pretty excited if the Saints took him at 9. Next on the list, I'll go Ty. I'll shout you out here. You got Luther Burden at number 2, Hammer as at number 1, Ned at number 3, and then I have him at number 3 as well. So I want to hear your thoughts, Ty, on Luther Burden.
Yeah, he didn't have the best year this year. He had a lot better of a junior year. Coming into this year, right, I think a lot of teams saw him as maybe the wide receiver one. I think part of that, again, another quarterback that I hate is we can give that to Brady Cook because there were just some times, man, he would miss him wide open, and it pained me to watch him. And, some of the durability concerns are there too because he was a little bit banged up. But I think his change of direction, his change of speed is super duper elite. Like the guy is constantly juking dudes out. Like his tempo, right? Ned talked about tempo before. I think this is a big tempo guy because he plays faster than 4.41 to me too, right? Like 4.41 was surprising. I thought he was a 4.3 guy because of how quick he can turn on a dime. I think he just probably has more lateral quickness and short area quickness than he does like long speed. I think he offers a lot of versatility, out of the backfield, right? We saw a lot of the jet sweeps, the throws out of the backfield. Like for me, he's kind of a little bit smaller, Deebo Samuel, maybe Saints Brandon Cooks type of player. I think he's a really natural hands catcher. He tracks the ball really well. On a lot of the deep balls that Brady Cook was kind of tossing up there, again, they were terrible throws, and he was making really, really great catches, kind of coming back to the ball. So I'd love to see that. And, he does have a decently compact frame, and he's a pretty good blocker for only being 5'11", 208. So, I think just a little bit more of the refining of the route skills. I think he relies a lot on the athleticism, be more of a technical route runner than just the fast guy that, I think sometimes he's rounding the routes instead of, making quick cuts. He can rely on his athleticism. So, and he just lacks a little bit of the experience against press coverage. I think, he day one, I know you talked, these next couple guys, you see them as more slots. I think day one, he probably plays a little bit more slot, but he has the outside ability, the burner ability to be an outside guy. Kind of reminds me of, not a player comp, but just the star of Troy Franklin, right? Troy Franklin came in last year, more of a slot guy. Now they're talking about him kind of playing more of the outside, being a burner type of guy. So the comp for me is Deebo and Brandon Cooks because he does provide that versatility. He also can come in day one. He bring a lot of energy as a punt returner because he's so electric. He had some of that experience in college. And just another stat to throw it on top, 85.9% catch rate. So that's super duper impressive. For a guy that didn't have the craziest stats this year, had a really good year last year, didn't have the best quarterback, balls that are coming his way, he's catching them 9 times out of 10. So 8.5 times out of 10. But.
All right, Ned, you had him a little bit lower on your list. Why did you have him at 3 and not higher up?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think I'm going to fall back on my sort of like underlying method here of like really trying to pick sure guys. And I mean, the third best receiver, in my opinion, is going to be a really good receiver in the NFL. So I think Luther Burden's going to be great in the NFL. I think his floor is really high because of his, after the catch ability. I think if you were to like manufacture touches for him, sort of like Ty was talking about, I think, he's going to produce sort of regardless. I think like the down the field route running skills like remain to be seen. Those are things that can be developed. I'm not exactly like worried about him as a prospect, and he's not like overly small or anything. And so I think, he can develop well, and I think he can be a solid NFL receiver. And I think the thing about him that is super translatable is like the suddenness. And I think that suddenness is going to help him a lot when it comes to like refining his route running. He honestly reminds me a little bit of a less explosive Garrett Wilson, who is not as refined a route runner at this point.
All right, Hammer, you have him at number 1. You got him really, really high on your list. So what's the biggest pros for him that you see really bumping him up?
I do. I like him a lot.
Higher
So
than
I'm hearing these comps though. He's not a unicorn. He's like a
higher than that. Higher
he's
than
like a
that.
bird. He's like a bird.
Higher than the
man.
unicorn. He's a what? He's a what, Hammer?
I don't know. He's an eagle.
Bird? Oh,
I don't know.
All right, man. Comparison kind
I'm
of crazy.
hearing these comps. Ned said, who you just said?
I think
Garrett Wilson, right? You said Garrett Wilson, Ned. Ty said Brandon Cooks
and Deebo.
and Deebo.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Stephon Diggs. That's what I saw. Like Stephon Diggs, like Ned said, the suddenness, the way he can make people miss. Look, I remember Stephon Diggs when he was with Minnesota, when he was younger and he was more spry. That's who I kind of saw on his tape. Can play inside, can play outside. I love Luther Burden a lot. I like him a lot. I think he's the best, playmaker in this receiver class. One of the best playmakers in the draft. Get him the ball and get out of the way. Yak King, he's twitchy. He's got good body control, good ball skills. Can play all over the field like we talked about. The only things that the weaknesses, I think the toughness over the middle, making catches in traffic, and I think there's a little diva in him. I think there's a little bit of a character in him. There was one clip, I forget who they were playing, but he like chucked
Alabama.
someone's mouthpiece. That was
He gave
Bama?
up against Alabama. Yeah, that's the big thing that he gave up against Bama. Yeah.
Yeah. So, little character, kind of like Stephon Diggs, and can be lazy with routes here and there. But, production was okay. I think quarterback, definitely limited him, just like Ty said. I think he's gonna make an impact right away. And yeah, he's my number one guy.
I like it. Yeah, no, I see one of the notes, it's not even a knock on him, but one of my notes is that 75% of his career catches were less than 10 yards downfield, according to PFF.
Yeah.
So I want to hear what you guys like. Is that
QB.
something that hurts a receiver in the draft stock, or is that just kind of obviously the quarterback, not the best? But I personally, I think it was just because as soon as you get the ball in his hands, that's when he's at his best. He's best as soon as the ball is in his hands, things like that. So I don't think it hurts his stock too much, but I want to hear what you guys think on that.
I think that's just kind of the Mizzou offense, right? Like that was their whole game plan, was to get him the ball as quick as possible so that he could make guys miss, because they couldn't trust Brady Cook to throw him the deep ball. When he did get thrown the deep ball, he made plays. He was electric. A lot of times the balls were underthrown. You watched I think it was the game against South Carolina, came back to a ball, scored a touchdown. There's a couple other times, right? Just a lot of underthrows. So I don't think it matters as much for him. I think it's prospect specific, and you just have to know the type of offense they're in, the quarterback they're in, and just know that he's a twitchy guy. So you want the ball in his hands immediately.
Yeah, I gotta agree, and I do like the comp. I'll say I think it's an easier comp, but I think like Debo for him, like he can run out of the backfield, he can do a little bit of everything. So
I got something crazy to say. His ceiling, don't shoot me on this, Jamar Chase. Like that's how good of a player that he could be. I think he could be that good of a player, in my opinion.
It's a little wild. Hey
Jamar
man,
Chase.
take is a take. I like all takes. I'll respect all takes, but I think it's a little. I mean, Jamar Chase out of college even was like different.
I'm telling you, Luther Burden. Look, if we were talking about him last year, he was different last year. Like he was.
He's awesome. He's awesome.
I mean, I'll respect the take. Anyways, moving on to number 1 for Ned and Ty. My number 5 and Hammers, I believe. Number 2, we got Matthew Golden. Ned, number 1 for your list and on Ty's list. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is almost as safe as it gets in this class, while also offering like a perfect blend of upside. I think he won a ton at Texas, and before that, when he was at Houston, he was a pretty dynamic player. I think he's more sudden than fast, but he's not slow by any measure. I mean, I think he ran a 4.30, and I think that is a little bit deceiving. I don't think he plays like a 4.30. I think he plays a little bit slower than that. Simultaneously, he is by no means slow. I think that one of the things I still want to see from him is, can he win versus man? I think he won versus zone a lot of Texas. I think they drew it up very well for him and got him open often. I think one of the things that I have to see him clean up too are his, drops. Simultaneously, I think he's an extremely explosive player, and I think he has great body control. So I think his floor is really high. Honestly, I think there's a lot of similarities between him and Luther Burden. I think he's almost just a little bit flipped, where like he is just so polished as a downfield receiver versus Luther Burden, who's like really great towards the line of scrimmage. But I think like physically, they're kind of similar. It's almost like if Luther Burden was like this super refined downfield threat.
Okay. All right. Ty, you had a number 1 as well. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think the difference between him and Burden, kind of like Ned was saying, he's just a little bit more refined. Like his takeoff and his route running skills, his takeoff was the most impressive thing to me, and jumped off the tape right away. Like it's silky smooth, and it helps him create a lot of separation. I just think he's got a bit of a smaller frame, like 6'1", 195. I mean, that kind of goes in with his speed, but if he could add a little bit but he has some durability concerns. So I think he needs to size out maybe a little bit more to kind of get rid of those concerns. And he's not really the most effective blocker either because he's a small guy. But,
Yep.
Ned hit all the points, right? His change of speed is very sudden. He's got elite body control, really good footwork. I think he's another guy that really understands spacing, kind of like Tet does, right? In scramble drills or in zone. He really reads those open spots really, really well. And I just love that he's always catching with his hands too, right? Like everything that he was doing on tape with his hands was what I wanted to see from Tet. I just wasn't seeing from him. He's a good kick returner too. He had kick return skills at Houston. So, another one of those guys that the top 3 guys on my board all have return ability, can come in day one and make an impact, not just as a receiver, but in the special teams game. In his first year out of Houston or leaving Houston, goes to Texas and he's their number 1 receiver. So, for me, it's like peak Jameson Williams, right? J-Mo was pick 12. A lot of guys thought he was going to be, and he is a good receiver, but I think the peak of Jameson Williams is what Matthew Golden could be, kind of that burner guy that has, I think he's probably more of a refined route runner than J-Mo too.
All right. I like it. Hammer, what are your thinks?
Yeah, I like what I like what Ned said. I think he's as safe as he gets. I think he's just going to be a really, really good receiver too. I don't know if he'll ever be a receiver 1, but he's going to be a really, really good receiver too.
Yep.
Like a Jordan Addison. I'm not comparing the players, but just kind of like rock solid number 2, who you can count on if your number 1 goes down or whatever. I like him a lot. The reason why he's not 1 for me is because when I'm looking at these guys, I'm looking at like 60% potential and 40% like, all right, this guy's going to come in and do this, like make this impact, right? Another half is potential, right? Because that's what I think teams do, right? When drafting and like in free agency, when you're signing guys to contracts, we're not going to sign you because of past production or what you've done, but what you will do. You know what I mean? So like when I'm looking at these receivers and all these guys in the draft, I'm looking at what they will do, what they will become. So like Matthew Golden, to me, he's going to become a really, really good receiver too, really safe. That's why he's number 2 for me on my list.
Yeah, see, that's the only reason he's number 5 for me. And when I'm evaluating these receivers, I really do kind of want them to be like, can they be a receiver 1? And when I'm going through the rankings, like I do agree. I think Matthew Golden's going to be really, really good, but I think his ceiling is like a great receiver too. And I'm hoping he proves me wrong. I hope all these guys like that are lower rankings, I hope they're dogs and prove me wrong. But I think he will be a really, really great receiver too. And that's the only really reason I have him at number 5. And another just quick like thing to note is I think like when he's route running, I don't think he's the best when facing press or like going through contact through the route, the top route, things like that. I want to see him get a little bit better at working through that. But I think he has everything it takes to be a solid receiver in the NFL. And that's kind of like this top 5. All these guys like are going to be good receivers. And I think like I was talking about it with Hammer before we started recording earlier today, that the drop off between T-Mac and all these other guys like has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. So for like the Saints, I would rather them take a cornerback at 9 and then go receiver at 40, because I think the potential that you're getting at pick 40 is good at receiver still, whereas like at corner you're going to be getting a lot more potential in the top 10 there. So like that's kind of like a note on the receiver. And being such a deep class, I want to break down a few sleepers that each of us have, because I think that's gonna be something fun to do. Pick a guy that we all like, lower ends of these boards that we think could have a good impact in the NFL. Ned, I'll let you go first because I already know your sleeper, but I'll let you go first. Who you got?
I am so excited about this football player. Oh my God. I can't put him in the top 5 because I think I'm reaching far back a little bit to do so. But I think Kyle Williams is going to develop into a solid wide receiver 3 in the NFL. I think he's going to be a great piece. I think if you really like Luther Burden, but you can't get him at like 20, I think if you can get Kyle Williams in the 4th round, I think you're getting like just as good a value. I mean, he is hyper productive over at Washington State. He has great releases. He's electric as a sort of screen gadget player. And I think that, he's a guy that popped out at the Senior Bowl. Like he came in and he started killing it at the Senior Bowl. And one guy who came in and started killing it at the Senior Bowl in a really similar way, in my mind, a couple of years ago, was another guy who I was in love with, who was Jayden Reed. I love Jayden Reed, what he did in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. Hammer, I'm sure you're pretty satisfied with what you've got with him. I think Kyle Williams could come in and have a similar type of like ascension in the NFL. I think there's a chance someone kind of plucks him day 2 and, he gets picked in the top 60 picks. And you're like, oh my goodness, Kyle Williams went really early. But I think he's a special football player. Again, super, super productive. I'm so excited about him. If, one of our teams gets him, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I think you're going to be very happy with what you get.
Yeah, Ned, real quick, I did see a mock. I forgot who it was. Someone mocked him as or someone had him in their top 5 receiver rankings at like number 3 or something. So some people have him really, really high. And
Chris Sims had him at number 2.
Chris Sims.
Yeah, it was Chris Sims.
Yeah, super high. Yeah. I don't know about that, but I think he's really talented. And I'm really excited to see what he does. I really like his release package as well. So I think, he's one of those guys who can make an impact in the NFL for sure.
I like it. Hammer, who's your sleeper?
I'm going to be boring. You already talked about him, but I'm going to go with Elic.
Okay.
That's the first name, right? Elic. Got that.
Yeah.
Got that down. And you know what? Since I'm not going to talk about him because you already did. Well, Alec's my guy, and I shared him with Jenks this morning, and Jenks, did his homework and put him in the top 5. He's my sleeper, and I gave you an animal for Tet. I gave you an animal for Burden. So I'll say Elic is the honey badger in this draft. He is the most badass receiver in this draft. Go watch his blocking highlights.
Yeah, his blocking highlights are sick. If you can, just search Elic Ayomanor blocking on Twitter, and you'll see, or X, but whatever.
He's pancaking 2 guys in the end zone. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, he loves it. He loves talking about it too in some interviews and stuff.
He takes pride. Yep.
Anyways, Ty, who's your sleeper?
Yeah, Jenks, this is the guy that we talked about right before we started recording. Nick Nash. He's kind of transitioning still into being receiver. He's only been a receiver for 2 years. Was a quarterback at San Jose State to start his career. Unanimous All-American, 104 catches, 1,300 yards, 16 touchdowns. On most boards, this guy's at like 20 and 30. I think his only bad game was against UNLV. I don't even think that was really his fault. Their quarterback was 4 for 22 in a rain-soaked game, and they had 112 total yards of offense. So every other game he dominated. When we look at the list of the other unanimous All-Americans, Genty, Kelvin Banks, Carter, Mason Graham, Caleb Downs, Travis Hunter, all going to be first-round picks. The only other one, Jay Higgins, probably a third-round pick. So we're talking about all these guys, unanimous All-American. They're going to be some of the best players in the NFL. And I think we're really, really overlooking this guy. I think, explosive leaping ability, consistently catching with his hands, like doing all the things that I want to see Tetairoa McMillan doing. And he's not. He's got a really high football IQ. I think he really understands the spacing, and I think that comes from the quarterback play. He really accelerates well through his routes. He's got a huge frame, and he does well over the middle with that frame. The only knock on him really is that he's just new to playing the position. He needs to refine his skills a little bit, but the effort's there. The frame is there. The athletic ability's there. 4.57, like not a bad 40 time for a bigger dude. For me, it's like, and he's a little bit older, right? So 6-year guy, so he's a little bit older. For me, very, very similar to Devon Vele, right? Devon Vele came in, 26 years old, picked in the 7th round, came in, win healthy this past year, was one of the better rookie receivers, was a safety blanket for Bo, really that wide receiver 2 for us. I think Nick Nash is the type of guy that you pick probably on day 3. He comes in, he's a decent wide receiver 3-year 1. And the thing with him is he hasn't probably seen his best football yet. He's got a lot of growing to do. You put him with a good receiving core or a good receiver coach, and he's got a lot of growing that he can do because the frame is there, the football IQ is there, and the athletic ability is there.
Yeah, I love it, Ty. I know, he was mocked. Nick Underhill, a guy I talked about earlier, he mocked him to the Saints as well. So, late rounds, like 6th round or something like that. All right. Anyways, Hammer throwing up the L over here. Come on, what are we doing? Anyways,
is that no on the screen? No.
Yeah, that's a no. No.
Yeah, you were good. You were good.
I see
the viewers. Hammer's mixing up his left and right. So
Hammer's hammered. Psych. It's a Thursday night. I don't drink. All right.
anyways, my
This is an
sleeper.
L for me. All right, whatever.
Yeah, it's flipped. It's flipped on the. But yeah, as
That
you,
was pretty good at me the first time to get it.
it was pure. It was pure like happen. It was like pure happenstance. Anyways, another guy that I would like the Saints to take in the later rounds that I think is a good sleeper. And I, if you'd follow us on Twitter anywhere, you guys know that I'm really high on him. Is gonna be Pat Bryant, Illinois receiver. Ned knows I've been like texting him about it too. Like I would do anything for this guy to be a Saint because he could be the next Michael Thomas. So I'll just say that it's a stretch, obviously, and I don't think there ever will be a guy like that. But I think the guy has really good traits that you want to see in a receiver that isn't obviously going to be an instant impact sort of player, but I think he could develop into one in his career. He's a bigger guy. He has pretty good route running, good burst when he needs it. He ran a slower 40 that bumped him down a lot of people's boards, but his adjusting to like balls out of his reach, really good. Can move his body and to do weird positions, make catches. He can run after the catch pretty well, and he has solid hands with contact, things like that. And he likes blocking too. So I think kind of a great bunch of traits there for him that will bump him up my draft board, but not everyone else's with that slow 40 time. Anyways, that'll do it for our receiver episode. I want to like just quick shout out. This was a really fun episode. All four of us on the pod. We're gonna do an NFL draft live stream with I think all three of us. Ned will probably come on for the commies pick. I don't know what you're doing, Ned, for the drafts. You're welcome to come on too if you want. And every team we're gonna have a guest come on, like come and react to their team's pick. I'll hopefully have a few like funny moments if some teams pick a random player or something like that. But
Like
it'll be a lot of
Jackson
fun.
Dart at 9.
Jackson, okay. I don't know.
I hope not.
Yeah,
Yes.
see,
Oh,
Me and
that's
Ty know
horrible.
it's coming.
Yep.
Oh,
We-
gosh.
Stop sleeping on
Hope
Dart.
not.
Stop sleeping on Dart. Great deep ball.
Oh,
Ned is,
God.
Ned is absolutely disgusted with Jackson.
I'm
You
like,
got
Dart
lost
at
the
nine.
film, Ned.
I can't
Anyways.
even find words to describe how out I am on that idea. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
Dart at
any.
nine.
Got
Oh
his,
my God.
got his in no ball. He has
The
no
only
ball.
the
This
only
is-
quarterback worth a top 10 pick in this draft is Cam Ward, and that's it. I think that's about it in my opinion. But
Jackson Dart. Do you like genuinely
Hey,
believe
3
that?
weeks from
Like,
tonight,
you
3
actually
weeks from
believe
tonight,
that?
Jenks, you're gonna be saying something different.
You're gonna have
You're
that
gonna
number
be
2
saying-
jersey on your back
You're
that
gonna
says
say
Dart.
Dart's the future.
Yeah.
I'll believe in whatever Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis decide, but I really want a receiver or a corner or Ashton Genty. That's kind of my
Jackson
three-
Dart and Jayden Higgins in the second.
All right, quick draft
wouldn't be bad.
question. Quick draft question.
Go
So
ahead.
I would say all of our teams are probably in the receiver market, right? So we just talked about receivers. So what's one realistic receiver for your team? In what round?
All right,
Jenks?
you go first, Hammer. You go first.
I'm gonna go first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Jayden Higgins in the second.
What's the second round pick? What's the number?
54, 53,
Yeah,
something like that.
I could see him falling there.
Maybe a trade up, but Jayden Higgins is our type, and I think that's good value in the second round.
Ned has a late round. Ned, would you want him in the first round or would you want him in the second?
Jayden
Receiver,
Higgins.
No,
The
we're not
Commanders
just
are
talking
doing
about
this thing
Jayden
right
Higgins.
now.
Just talking about
like receiver in general.
like
Yeah, I mean they're doing this thing right now where they're not really picking like for needs. So 29, I think they're just gonna take whoever is like falling, who they have a high grade on. If a guy like Luther Bird was there, I'd like him. Simultaneously, I think they need like a Z receiver, right? Like they got the X and Terry McLaurin. They have their sort of slot gadget guy, Debo Samuel. So a lot of these guys kind of get disqualified. So I mean, Jayden Higgins is kind of the only guy who I think like fits into the picture, so to speak, of the Commanders right now. But nevertheless, that's not really how they do things. I don't know. I think if any of my top three are there, Golden, Egbuka, Burden, Tet, obviously, like if they was at 29, they'd pick Tet McMillan. Any of those four guys, they pick them. If those guys aren't there, I don't really think they go receiver. And we have the 61st pick in the second round, so I'm not sure that any of these guys really talk about either at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where I don't know if Washington's going to take a receiver in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, they're a little bit of a wild card in the first round this year. They can kind of go wherever. Ty, what are your thoughts? You're a little bit later, but I think you want a running back. We've talked about it a lot. You're big on the running backs here, but first or second round, would you want a receiver in any of those picks?
Yeah, I think in the first, if it's going to be anyone, a lot of the buzz lately has been Egbuka because we don't, we went after Cooper Kupp. I think we could use a more elite slot receiver. with the way that we're using Mims too, as more of like a back kind of do it all weapon. If we go with like a Hampton or someone else in the first, I think we'll probably wait until the third or the fourth to take Bo Nix's brother, Tez Johnson, who's another guy that I thought about having as a sleeper because, I think the 40 time in the frame set a lot of people off, but you turn on the tape, the dude plays lightning quick. So,
yeah, that 40 time was wild. Like
he
I
plays
was
much
so ready.
faster,
I was so ready for like a high time. I was watching the comment like this guy he's small. He was lighter than
I'm
me.
telling you though, he's way twitchier on tape. It's crazy. He's twitchier than Burden is.
It's fair, but yeah, it was definitely a knock. Definitely not.
If Tank Dell at 4.50 didn't scare you, Tez Walker at 4.55 shouldn't scare you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
It's a fair.
They're similar frame too.
Yeah, and
that's why
we've seen what he does, what he's done. So
break his leg 3 times.
Well, that's just really unlucky. But yeah, it's maybe put some meat on your bones, Tez. Anyways, that'll do it for the Jenks Island receiver rankings episode. There's, I think, next week we got safeties and corners. Yeah, DBs, and then quarterbacks the week after that, and then mock draft episode. And maybe we'll do like a episode with just our team, something like that. We'll figure it out. But we had a lot of good content coming to you guys in the live stream on draft day. But anyways, that'll do it. You guys know where to check us out on Jenks Island, on all social medias and Jenks Island, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you guys next week.